This week on Christian World News, a secret war inside Ukraine targeting Christians. You may be surprised to learn who's behind the attacks. Plus,
people are literally dying in the streets. Now, here's the hard truth. In West Africa, Ebola is now an epidemic of the likes that we have not seen before.
an entire nation shuts down to fight Ebola, and the U.S. launches a major outreach to help. And we'll visit the village where dreams come true for very sick children, a place where they get to eat ice cream all day and celebrate Christmas once a week. The struggle in Ukraine turns Christians into targets. Hello, everyone. I'm Wendy Griffith. The brutal battles between Russian separatists and Ukraine forces have killed more than 2,500 people this year. Ukrainian Christians also suffered intense persecution during the fighting, often with deadly consequences. George Thomas brings us this exclusive report from eastern Ukraine.
It's a scene that has played in Olena Velichko's head over and over. Pro-Russian rebels took over her hometown in early April. Her husband Vladimir told her to take the kids and leave the city.
He took us to the train station and we said goodbye. He said, "I love you." He kissed me and kissed the children and left.
Several days later, her life and that of her 8 children, ages 2 to 16, suddenly turned upside down. It was June 8th, Pentecost Sunday. The church was half empty. That's because the city was under assault by both pro-Russian separatists and the Ukrainian army. Once the church service ended, everybody made their way to the front of the church to go home. But then the unimaginable happened.
The church called us and said my husband, along with 3 other believers, had been taken by men who were waiting outside the church.
Can you tell me what happened when you came out? Alexander Gaivoronsky, a church deacon, was there that Sunday morning.
The men wore masks and had machine guns. They told the 4 Christian men to get into their cars.
The rebels took the pastor's sons, Ruvim and Albert Pavenko, Viktor Brodatsky, and Olena's husband, Vladimir. Multiple sources tell CBN News what then happened to the 4 Christian captives. First, rebels took them outside the city and severely tortured them. The next day, June 9th, the men were put in a car and told to drive away. Then minutes later, they were recaptured and shot multiple times. Olena's husband was burned in the car.
I don't hate my husband's killers. It's easy to start asking questions, why did this happen? But if I keep thinking about this, it will only wear me out.
That same day, rebels burned down the largest furniture factory that belonged to Ruvim and Albert Pavenko's father. It had become clear rebels were targeting the city's evangelical community.
I never thought that in the 21st century, in a free country as Ukraine, it was possible to experience this level of persecution.
Sergei Dimidovich, a top evangelical leader in Slavyansk, says Christians faced constant threat.
The separatists saw Protestant Christians as enemies. They viewed us as a cult.
But the persecution was just getting started.
All the Protestant churches in the city were either taken over by rebels or forced to close. We are forbidden to meet in services, and the leadership forced to leave or be under risk of arrest.
And the persecution was spreading far beyond just this city. Throughout the Donetsk and Luhansk regions, as rebels gain more territory, assaults against evangelicals are growing. 2 pastors told CBN News they were arrested and tortured for their faith. What would happen if you went back to Donetsk?
If I went to Donetsk today, I would be arrested at the first checkpoint and put in jail. The last time I was in prison, they beat me up so badly, but I kept preaching the gospel and telling them to repent.
Many believe the persecution is linked to pressure from the Russian Orthodox Church, and the pro-Russian rebels are only happy to do their bidding.
When I was in prison, a rebel soldier told me that they have an order to kill all Christian pastors who are not part of the Russian Orthodox Church.
While that has forced some to go underground, others are deciding to stay.
Many heroes are born out of this conflict, men and women who are boldly sharing their faith and helping those caught in this war.
Olena Velichko says there's not a day that goes by that she doesn't think of that last goodbye, that final kiss she had with her husband at the train station. But she is unwavering in her faith, trusting God to take care of her, the children, and Ukraine.
People often ask me how I'm doing. I tell them about a mighty God who can heal our hearts. Maybe not as quickly as we would like it, but the process is going on, and the prayers of people around the world help. The biggest thing you can do for me is to pray for me, for my family, about the future of my children and my country.
George Thomas, CBN News, Eastern Ukraine.
Thanks, George. And we are indeed praying for that family and all who are suffering in the Ukraine. Well, Kent Brantley, the American doctor who recently recovered from Ebola, says the U.S. didn't act quickly enough to combat the disease. And other experts caution that if the deadly virus is not stopped now, we could be fighting it for years. That warning comes as President Obama launches a major new effort against Ebola. Caitlin Burke has the story.
It's an aggressive new effort to combat Ebola.
People are literally dying in the streets. Now, here's the hard truth. In West Africa, Ebola is now an epidemic of the likes that we have not seen before.
On Monday at the CDC headquarters in Atlanta, President Obama outlined the steps the U.S. will take in West Africa. They include a new command center in Liberia, an American general on the ground coordinating both U.S. and international relief efforts, and thousands of U.S. military personnel in Liberia to support the command center. Dr. Kent Brantley, an American survivor of Ebola, says the government's new call to action is coming dangerously delayed. Early on, he and other health officials pleaded for more resources in their fight against the virus, but they were ignored by the U.S. until Brantley and other infected Americans were sent home last month for treatment. On Tuesday, lawmakers held a hearing on Ebola. Experts from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention warned that if Ebola isn't stopped now, we could be dealing with it for years to come. And Dr. Brantley told senators that the deadly virus could spread like a wildfire.
Indeed, it is a fire. It is a fire straight from the pit of hell. We cannot fool ourselves into thinking that the vast moat of the Atlantic Ocean will protect us from the flames of this fire.
The World Health Organization says the window of opportunity to end the Ebola outbreak is closing. They predict the number of Ebola cases could start doubling every 3 weeks in West Africa and could cost nearly $1 billion to contain.
We must move quickly and immediately to deliver the promises that have been made and to be open to practical, innovative interventions. This is the only way to keep entire nations from being reduced to ashes.
Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Carrie Joe is a missionary nurse who recently returned to America from the Ebola crisis zone in Sierra Leone. Recently, our Gary Lane asked Ms. Joe why she put her life at risk to help Ebola victims in Africa and how the world can help.
President Obama is sending 3,000 U.S. troops to Liberia, Carrie, to help combat the spread of Ebola. Do you think that's going to be enough?
Wow, 3,000 troops is a good start. Several of us talked about the need for a lot of good structure coming in and discipline, and I think that's a good start. But there's I think, need for more than that.
Well, we have heard a lot about the Ebola outbreak in Liberia, so how bad is it in Sierra Leone?
It's incredibly overwhelming. I think Liberia is worse. I don't have on-the-ground experience in Liberia, but from what I read and hear, I think Liberia is worse. But parts of Sierra Leone and Liberia that we call it the Mono River Basin are very intertwined. And that's where the epicenter really is. And then having spread to the big city of Monrovia, it just exploded there with that huge, dense population group. But Sierra Leone is incredibly affected.
Christians are the first responders, and many are willing to lay their lives down. What is it that motivates you?
That exact same thing. You know, that I'm a nurse and I respond to need, but the reality of knowing that a lot of the people we took care of or will take care of are going to die. But if I don't as a believer, if I don't offer them the opportunity to come to know Jesus Christ as their Savior before they die, then I failed. I can take great care of them, but if I haven't introduced them to Jesus and given them that opportunity, it's all for nothing. So that's the reality of what really hit me, is that I needed to be there, I needed to be part of this, but I also needed to be Jesus' hands and feet.
And so what needs to be done now?
I think we as believers have a wide open door to step in an educated, organized manner and respond with education, with supplies, but with a targeted response, not just a snowball approach and see what sticks, but take what needs to be done, work through groups on the ground like World Hope International, Samaritan's Purse, that are doing a great job. World Hope was who I went with. They're phenomenal on the ground. They have good contacts. They're focusing on education, on support of systems that are in place, that are working. So I think supporting groups like that is really key.
Coming up, the ISIS army poses a threat to a Middle Eastern country with one of the largest Christian populations. How will Lebanon's believers respond to the threat?
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. 8 years ago, my husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Inside every child is a hero, a leader, a friend to others, someone who helps out, who does the right thing, who dreams of what they can be, but they still need our help.
What should I do? What should I say? How should I feel?
That's where Superbook comes in. It provides moral and spiritual truths through situations children can relate to, teaching God's Word to the children you love. Join the Superbook DVD Club and receive Superbook's newest episodes as they're available, plus 2 copies to share with others, all for your gift of only $25. Get Superbook today and watch the miracles happen.
Welcome back. The U.S. Congress approved President Obama's strategy to fight ISIS. He's pledging not to send American soldiers into combat against the jihadi army. But military experts say boots on the ground are crucial to victory. The president wants to use soldiers from other countries like Iraq and Syria. Dale Hurd has the story.
This vote, the yeas are 273, the nays are 156. The amendment is adopted.
President Obama's request for congressional backing to train and arm rebels battling the Islamic State was approved easily. Before a packed gym at MacDill Air Force Base in Florida, the president continued to insist that this is not a prelude to American ground troops.
I will not commit you and the rest of our armed forces to fighting another ground war in Iraq.
But even the president's own chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff seemed to open the door to more U.S. involvement if airstrikes are not enough.
His stated policy is that we will not have U.S. ground forces in direct combat. But he has told me as well to come back to him on a case-by-case basis.
Before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Secretary of State John Kerry repeated the president's assertion that American ground forces will not go into combat against the Islamic State. He was met with skepticism.
Arab Sunni country is going to be putting boots on the ground in Syria against this now claimed army by your deputy.
At this moment, no country has been asked to put boots on the ground, or no country is talking of it.
The president's strategy is a campaign of airstrikes against Islamic State targets in Iraq in order to back Iraqi and Kurdish units on the ground. The White House claims more than 40 countries have offered assistance in a global coalition to fight Islamic militants. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thanks, Dale. The ISIS army is threatening neighboring states, including Lebanon, which has one of the largest Christian populations in the region. Lebanese Christian leader Walid Faris told CBN's Gary Lane that the consequences could be dire for Lebanese believers.
The Lebanese army battled Islamic State fighters recently in the border town of Irsal. Faris expects ISIS to target northern Lebanon, including the city of Tripoli. He believes Hezbollah will gain more control over the country as it mobilizes the Lebanese, including some Christians, to oppose ISIS. Lebanese Christians are now arming themselves to avoid the same fate as believers in Syria and Iraq. But with complicated loyalties in the Middle East, who should they trust? Faris simply urges Christian factions to unite.
It's not a good idea for fighting ISIS to be the friend of Hezbollah and for fighting Hezbollah to be the friends of ISIS. Lebanese Christians should be united with other Lebanese against all jihadists of all kinds.
I know we looked at 30 years ago. What about 30 years from now? What will Lebanon look like?
It's going to depend a lot on what Washington will be doing in the next 5 to 6 years. If Washington continues with the same policy, I would see that the Christians in Lebanon will become a very small minority and controlled by either Hezbollah or ISIS, depending who's going to win.
Their future may depend on lessons learned from Lebanon's past. Washington choices affect Middle East power, and the results can have a lasting impact on America. Gary Lane, CBN News, Beirut.
Thank you, Gary. Up next, a special place for special kids. How this Florida retreat is giving terminally ill children and their families an escape from their troubles.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
CBNnews.com. News you want, when you want, 24/7. Stay current with up-to-the-minute stories.
Ephraim Graham, CBN News, New York.
I don't have to wait for my news anymore. CBNnews.com at your fingertips all day long.
I only watch the stories I want to see.
I find the story, I click on it, and boom, I'm there.
Embassy in Washington, Eric Stakelbeck, CBN News.
The source for your news, CBNnews.com.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. 8 years ago, my husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Welcome back to Christian World News. It can be one of the most painful experiences any family will ever know, caring for a child with a terminal disease. But a special vacation spot in Florida gives sick children and their families a haven of joy during tough times. Angela Zatopek brings us that story from Celebration, Florida.
A storybook resort not far from the Magic Kingdom in Orlando helps create magical moments for those in need of hope. Give Kids the World Village welcomes families with a child suffering from a life-threatening illness. For the families and kids that come to the resort, it offers them a retreat from their daily routines of hospital visits and medical treatments to what feels like a real-life Candyland, complete with a gingerbread house located right behind me. Designed through the eyes of a child, the village makes young dreams come true.
You can just see they're just so tired of the battle, and they're tired of getting poked and prodded. And so what we want to do is to give them a whole week where the answer to everything is yes.
Imagine ice cream served from morning till night, and Christmas every week, complete with snow and presents. As you walk through this whimsical world, the vibrant colors and sounds seem to create happiness and inspire hope.
We work with 250 wish-granting organizations around the world, and so if a child wants to come to Orlando and their wish is granted by a wish-granting organization, 50% of the kids do want to come to Orlando, and they call us and they come here for the vacation.
The village was founded by Henry Landworth, a man who knows what it's like to be a child with stolen dreams. As a boy, he spent 5 years in Nazi concentration camps where his parents were killed. Though Landworth escaped, his childhood had vanished. Now 87 years old, he has dedicated his life to restoring stolen childhoods.
In many cases, I see myself in these children's faces. Because when I was 13, I was taken to Auschwitz, which was one of the worst camps you could possibly be in. I had no idea that I would be living. I felt that I needed to do something.
The village has helped more than 130,000 families from 72 different countries. Volunteers work year-round. They come from churches, corporations, and special events like Hearts of Reality.
Us here for a day has been great. You've seen those little kids smile, and being a pirate for them, it's been fun. It's been very fun.
I've had ovarian cancer twice, but thinking about having a disease or having an illness that is so restricting, and you're a kid, and your sister or brother's going through it, or you're seeing your child go through it, it's so different. Having something like Give Kids the World is allowing them not to think of their illness for a second. And they're allowed to think of being a kid and being a brother and being a mother and being a father in a family.
Many families return to help spread the same hope and love that changed their lives. The Lohman family visited in 2009 with their 3-year-old son, Noah.
Noah was diagnosed before he was born with a genetic disorder, and we were given the option to terminate at that point, which we didn't and didn't feel comfortable doing, thank goodness.
After Noah passed away, they moved from their home in Canada to work at the village.
From having Noah and just being blessed by him and the joy that he brought to our lives, although we miss him dearly and we were obviously sad to not have him in our family any longer, the joy of having him and the joy of encouraging other families going through those tough times is something we wanted to share. And so what better way than to come to the place where we felt that from other volunteers and other families.
Give Kids the World Village is still expanding, fulfilling its mission to bring love, laughter, and healing to children and their families.
I just wanted to say thank you. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Angela Zatopek, CBN News, Celebration, Florida.
And you can get great stories about the work of the church around the world on our Christian World News webpage. Find it at cbnnews.com. We'll be right back.
Give me that. Bye. Sure, life is busy, but I found a way to make a huge difference in people's lives. I guess you could say I'm changing the world right here from home. I bring medical supplies and doctors to people in need, and dig wells so that villagers can have clean and safe water to drink. I make it possible to preach the gospel in over 100 countries, including right here in America. And when disaster strikes, I'm there, providing food, thank you, and emergency supplies to give people hope again. Every day, CBN and I are making the world a better place. Here you go. My life is hectic, so I joined CBN through Pledge Express. My bank does all the work, and I know that my gift is being used where it's needed most. So become a CBN partner and join Pledge Express, because you can do a world of good right from where you are. Hi, good morning. Are you ready to get started?
We all want to live in the favor and anointing of God. We want His wisdom to solve problems and His provision for all we need. The Bible tells us the Lord has put eternity in our hearts. Each of us wants the certainty of heaven, to know our lives have purpose and that we are playing a vital role in accomplishing His plan for all mankind.
In Pat and Gordon Robertson's latest DVD teaching, Living Under God's Blessing, you'll discover how to receive wisdom to solve today's problems, the keys to provision for meeting all your needs, and how you can be a part of His plan for the world today. Call now to receive Living Under God's Blessing, featuring the 3-time Emmy-nominated series, Made in Israel.
May God bless you, and may you enjoy and live under the blessing of the Lord always.
Living Under God's Blessing, available now.
Well, many of you know I just recently returned from Africa, where I climbed the highest freestanding mountain in the world, Mount Kilimanjaro. Here are a few highlights from the 6-day trek to the summit.
Our journey on Kilimanjaro begins here in the oxygen-rich rainforest, lush green and wet. We're in day 2 of our hike on Kilimanjaro, and we're in the middle of a pretty steep climb here in the midst. And our porters who are with me, they're helping carry our stuff and constantly reminding us at this elevation to go slowly, which in Swahili means pole pole. Pole pole. Well, it's now day 3 of our climb on Kilimanjaro, and we can finally see our destination. Right there behind me, the peak of Kilimanjaro, 19,000 feet, snow in the clouds. Can't wait to get up there. You know, it reminds me of Psalm 121. I will lift my eyes up to the hills. From where comes my help? My help comes from God, the maker of heaven and earth. Onward we go. We're now in day 5 of our hike on Kilimanjaro, and a beautiful sunny day. We're so happy about that. We're on our way up to Kosovo Camp, where we're gonna have lunch, have a nice rest, and then at midnight, we're taking off for the ultimate ascent up to the peak of Kilimanjaro, known as Uhuru Peak. Pole pole!
Pole pole, Hakuna Matata.
And I want to thank my Tanzanian guide, Moody. Without him, I wouldn't have made it. Around 18,000 feet, almost turned back, but he said, Wendy, it's going to get easier if you keep going. So there's a lesson there. Keep going. And thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed those highlights. Until next week, from all of us here at Christian World News, goodbye and God bless you.